Hey neighbor, welcome to another chapter of the never-ending 7 on Sunday saga. As if that wasn't enough S's, today's theme is Sophomore Slumps, second albums that failed to connect after a highly successful debut. Sales might get brought up here and there, but this specific list isn't about chart success or numbers. The second album stumble covers the noticeable drop in quality from album 1 to 2, fulfilling the pesky prophecy, your whole life to make your first album, only a year to make the second one. I wanted to see what sort of recurring themes connected these records, whether it was rushed, forced out under pressure, or a total departure from their original style. It's Sophomore Slump season. Hit me with your list of second album disappointments in the comments, and please understand that I'm not saying that everything here is automatically trash just because it's on the list. Please hit that like button for good luck, and let's get started.
Gotta give me just a little of your love, baby, and that's right. You gotta give me just a little of your love.
Sister Act Haim were poised to be the next big thing. But much like a drunken game of telephone, their original vision seems to have been lost in translation. Their debut album, Days Are Gone, struts with a throwback cadence that paired 70s instrumentation with glorious vocal melodies. The sibling trio nail the tightrope walk between paying homage and getting lost in nostalgia, since tracks like My Song 5 really did prove that there was an exciting path forward should they choose to work it out in the studio. Years of touring the world on that initial wave of acclaim led to an unexpectedly long gap between Days Are Gone and the rather colorless, humdrum second album, Something to Tell You. As that album slowly rolled out in 2017, you could feel that something was off. Lead single Want You Back failed to do anything but circle the retro pop rock drain, an early sign that maybe their sophomore set wasn't gonna make the long wait pay off. This isn't an awful album, it's just exceedingly average, monochrome, all that jazz. It's okay in small doses or maybe as background music, but in one blink you zone out during the middling Ready For You before snapping back to life on Right Now, an intriguing song that I count as one of the best on Something to Tell You.
Away from the gates, away from the space, the circumstances of a world so cold.
Metalheads might not choose Mudvayne as one of the all-time greats, God knows I wouldn't either, but their story began with a fuck ton of potential thanks to one extremely off-the-rails debut, LD50. Chad Gray howls with anger as their mind-blowing bassist Ryan Martini slaps, pops, and grooves to give their first album a truly unique headbang-worthy sound. Strong foreboding interludes bring together the missing pieces, as the full-length tracks zero in on brutality without completely unchaining the melody. Even though LD50 showed how pressure can sometimes squeeze out a diamond, their Sophomore Slump, the end of all things to come, can't say the same. Mudvayne isolated themselves for an entire month to write the follow-up, straying from what made them stand out as they chased the nu metal dragon right into a trap they never fully escaped. LD50 is the longer album, yet the end seems to have no end. The anger feels a lot more trivial the second time around, with the more streamlined production approach meant to give them a three-dimensional sound actually working against them by limiting and caging their insanity. Killer songs like Not Falling go hard in the paint, but that's the big single. Of course, they're gonna put out the best song as the lead single. They wanted to buck expectations in order to hype up their new release. Too bad it's nothing more than a thin layer of paint on top of a rusted wasteland of mediocrity. This thing is spottier than a Dalmatian, but it's still not something that I find insultingly bad. That's an insult that I would save for their next 3 albums because they suck truck nuts.
It's beating on my back with a fire.
U2 are one of those larger-than-life bands that I find myself puzzled by. I've never been all that fond of them, but a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that I was born in 1991, the year they apparently decided no more classics, we only make average pop rock now. Maybe we can at least agree that most of their discography up through Achtung Baby is on a totally different level than what they did in the second half of their career, aka the Bono, Your Messiah Complex is showing era.
Where?
1980 welcomed the release of Boy, a very good debut album that held a torch for the kind of atmospheric post-punk they'd shy away from by the mid-80s. Bono comes through with earnest vocals, there's enough punctuation on the instrumentation to hook your attention, plus the production and the mixing holds up surprisingly well. October came out the very next October, even though it really shouldn't have. Bono lost an entire suitcase full of material while on tour, meaning they hit the studio for album 2 with almost no ideas and extreme time constraints. This intense pressure to churn out a full-length album affected the recording in every way imaginable, so I do sympathize to a degree, despite not getting much out of this 41-minute experience. God and Christianity were at the heart of U2 from day one. Album 2 happened to be a non-stop carnival of chaos for everyone involved, so I guess Bono turned to the heavens for inspiration. Sadly, I think he may have been redirected to God's secretary, because October's lyrics read less like the Bible and more like a rough draft that you'd jot down on a napkin. If it's any consolation for it appearing at all, out of all 7 albums in the video, I enjoy Sublime's sophomore full-length Robbin the Hood more than anything else. When the California trio unleashed 40 Ounce to Freedom in 1992, people were stoked to hear such an oddly satisfying blend of reggae, ska, rap, punk, and rock. Most people recognize the album covers and at bare minimum the hits from both 40 Ounce and the self-titled Sublime record, yet sandwiched in the middle of those two juggernauts is a somewhat forgotten mess. Late frontman Bradley Nowell insisted the self-produced Robbin the Hood was recorded in a crack house. There's no doubt in my mind that this is what happened, although it is kind of funny to imagine Gwen Stefani recording guest vocals for Saw Red in a drug den. The scattershot track list makes constant out-of-nowhere U-turns, which is low-key infuriating for anyone trying to settle into the album's vibe. Call it Sublime's coat of many colors. One second it's reggae rock as you would expect, the next they're acting like madmen, splicing together film frames of dub, street interviews, and random sampling to make sure you walk away feeling dazed and confused. They say there's a lid for every jar, but what we have here, folks, is a barrel. The bottom of one, to be specific. Bush are an English grunge band, which I almost don't want to let myself believe because they really do sound like a very bad American band on the shit stain of a Sophomore Slump Razorblade Suitcase. I don't know that I've heard too many albums that actively felt like they were stalling in order to make the songs and thus the overall record longer. It's extremely hard to sit through because you know there's no destination, just endless purgatory with your host, Mr. Gavin Smokes 8 Packs a Day Rossdale.
Hello everyone. I've been told my singing voice sounds like the physical manifestation of smog pollution.
Okay, I honestly do like their debut 16 Stone despite the flaws. It's a memorable grunge release with some badass singles from Machine Head to Everything Zen. They were riding a few coattails of the early 90s American scene, that's for sure, but no one could have predicted the lengths they'd go to in order to ensure that they sounded like a shitty Nirvana tribute band, except somehow they also got Steve Albini to produce this dumpster fire? Gavin gurgles out choruses ad nauseum, practically choking on the album's complete lack of any damn hooks. Obviously, the rest of the band takes the nosedive in tandem, and then amateur nonsensical noise happens for 61 minutes. The Brits caught a case of American grunge-itis, but instead of consulting a doctor, they left it untreated for years. Razorblade Suitcase is suffocating in its pursuit of nothingness. Hollow songs beget empty, rhythmless waveforms for an hour. It's the perfect segue because I think this album sounds constipated, which I know is a very weird analogy, but when you're so irritated by what you're listening to that little nitpicky things like the way Gavin says light switch on Cold Contagious, it's driving me insane, that means I'm at a breaking point.
Photos, more photos, and gossip about hoes that they don't know. Oh, they talk shit.
Melanie Martinez is a major anomaly in the industry. After her run on the music competition show The Voice was cut short in 2012, she completely defied the unspoken fact that most artists who lose a singing contest, hell, even the winners these days peak in popularity while the show is happening, it proved that she actually broke the spell. I reviewed and praised Melanie's Anything But Ordinary debut album Crybaby in 2015, having no idea what I had stumbled onto. Her fandom was growing at an alarming rate, as listeners latched onto her morose usage of metaphors to complement the borderline unnerving childlike aesthetics found in her music videos and artwork. Then at the height of her crossover appeal, she faced allegations of sexual assault by a former friend Timothy Heller in late 2017. I don't want to get too into that since I don't know a ton of the details there, but I do think that the negative behind-the-scenes turmoil impacted her long-delayed follow-up K through 12. Instead of evolving further with the weird, off-kilter alternative pop that made Crybaby so great, K through 12 is a pretty dull, hookless outing. The full-length film that went with it felt confusing, contrived, and stitched together, indicative of the black hole issue that sucked the life right out of Melanie's world. Crybaby struck me as cutting edge, the way she discussed traumatic topics through the disguise of childlike innocence. K through 12 did the exact same shit, except with the bar lowered to the ground, given the lack of catchiness or compelling lyrics. Her first album was buzzed about for years after it dropped, but K through 12 kicked rocks all the way back to the playground. Melanie Martinez failed to reach beyond recycled fan service, but I really hope that she wows again artistically in the future. How did the Stone Roses make an electrifying debut in 1989, and why did they come back 5 years later with this steaming crockpot of watered-down piss? Rolling Stone called their sophomore set tuneless in their 1994 review. In my 2022 review? Yeah, what they said in 1994. This thing's more barren than the Virgin Mary. You thought Oasis had a bloating problem with Be Here Now? You ain't seen nothing, mate. 72 minutes of noodling psychedelic hoopla is waiting just behind door number 2. This album is like a tax write-off. I sat through the entire thing, so what the hell? Might as well air my grievances publicly. The writing alone is mind-numbing. I don't see how they didn't get laughed out of the studio with the way that some of these tracks spiral into nothingness. Everything feels like cheap wallpaper put up in a mansion. You know that this was an expensive to produce product, but they choose to twiddle their thumbs and drag the songs out way too long. Cleanse yourself from that sin by tossing on their self-titled album. The magic floats right back into the room to remind us that that feeling never left. And hey, if you want to pretend the second coming didn't happen, I'm right there with ya. Now that we're at the end of the list, I'm thinking back on all of the connecting factors for all of these sophomore slumps and the biggest reoccurrences I noticed. 1, it's that they were rushed in the studio. 2, bloated runtimes. 3, copy and paste syndrome from LP 1 to 2. And 4, not making long waits worth the extended hype cycle. What do you guys think is the biggest sophomore slump album of all time? I intentionally didn't include anything super recent since I like to let albums live and breathe for a little while. Anyways, you can check out some recent episodes on screen. Thank you for watching, for hitting the like button, and next time you see me for 7 on Sunday, I'll be a married man. Peace.